David Skaith, you're standing to be, well, a newly appointed mayor of York and North Yorkshire. We've got elections coming up in May. Can you just introduce yourself, say a bit about who you are?
Yeah, of course, yeah. So I'm from Harrogate originally. It's always nice to be back here. I've got a small shop in York and I'm now living in a little village called Weldrake, just outside York. Was born in Harrogate, lived here till I was about 19, 20. Went to York St John over in York and pretty much stayed there ever since, really. Set my own business up in 2015, a small independent men's clothing shop, which proudly got through COVID and the cost of living and everything else that we've all gone through and Brexit and all the impacts that's had on it. Luckily we survived. We've grown pretty strong business since then and we've had that going for the last 8 or 9 years. High Street is really important to me. That's why I wanted to have an independent shop on the High Street, a bricks and mortar, rather than just being online, because I really believe passionately about growing our towns, our cities right across the region and really bringing people back into them and supporting local small operations like mine. And
this kind of move into politics, you're not currently a councillor, are you? So it's a relatively kind of new, a new thing for you. What has made you want to stand to become the mayor?
I see the mayor slightly different to a typical political position. I see it more as an enabling role, bringing people together, someone who's got a mindset into business. It's about bringing communities, different organisations right across York and North Yorkshire to have that collective growth. No individual can do this alone. It's such a big region. It's such a huge job. You've got to be able to bring people together, get the right people in the room, around the table, and set an agenda and set a direction. And that's what, as a businessman, I've done for the last 8 or 10 years. The reason now, I'll be honest, like a lot of people, I'm completely fed up with politics. The last 14 years of having a Conservative government has been awful for this country. Having a wife who's been a teacher for 13 years, I've seen firsthand how difficult it's been in education. My older brother's a police officer right here in Harrogate. You know, it's been really tough in terms of funding cuts and resources cut to both police and fire. My mum's been on an NHS waiting list for over 2.5 years now, and it's just not good enough. We are meant to be the 6th strongest economy in the world, 6th richest economy in the world, and yet we've got 4 million people, 4 million children living in poverty. That's not good enough. You drive around anywhere in North Yorkshire and York, look at the state of the roads. We're not building enough housing. We're not in a good place. Local authorities on their knees. Huge cuts to local authorities. It's just not good enough. And you can be someone who can sit around and complain on social media about everything, or you can try and get out and do something. And I'm not going to say I've got all the answers to everything, but what I have is a passion and determination to make things better and to do things differently. Because we carry on the road we're going on, we're just going to be doing the same, and getting ourselves into more and more difficulties, more cuts, more underfunding, and we just can't go on like this. York and North Yorkshire as well, in terms of the North generally in Yorkshire, has always been left behind more, has been cut more severely. You know, the issues we have always seem to be heightened more than the rest of the country, particularly in the south. We need to make that change. And having a mayor for York and North Yorkshire, linked with the 2 other mayors in South and West Yorkshire, Labour mayors, and having a Labour government, which we will have at some time this year, will create that first time, that great connection between York, North Yorkshire, Yorkshire as a whole, and the national government to really showcase how important we are, how valuable our region is. We have fantastic rural communities. We have great city like York and places like Harrogate, fantastic coastal regions that have been neglected and let down, because we've never had that direct voice to government, and now we'll have that, and I want to be that person who stands up and fights for the region that I love and I've lived in all my life.
And that connection then with the other mayors, is that one of the reasons why you want to stand for Labour? Because obviously, you know, you could have stood as an independent, and you know, obviously there is an independent candidate as well. And I think there's sort of some people have different views about the influence of politics, if you like, or political parties on roles like the PFCC and mayors. Why did you decide to stand for the Labour Party then as mayor?
I've been a Labour member for a long time, and I truly believe they are the party that will make great change to the country, and we need that change. And I think they are sending us in the direction that we need to be going in. When they're talking a lot about supporting local communities, investing back into police, supporting small businesses, that's where I believe we need to be stronger, looking after our education. Those are the key areas that have been neglected for so long, that are our real core base levels that we need to be supporting, and we haven't been. So I've been a Labour member for quite a few years, regularly going out campaigning and door knocking with them. And it's the party where I feel completely at home with, and I've met so many fantastic Labour councillors, not just in York but other areas, and the work they do, they are so passionate and so invested in their local communities, and I don't see that from any other party, and it's something that Labour have been doing fantastically well, and I'm fully committed to the Labour Party because I know that's the party that are going to make the change we need to do.
Yeah.
There are independents, and I think that's great that we have independents, we have people from all different parties, because we would need that big representation for everyone to be able to get behind and support and to see the party in the direction that they want to go in, and that's fantastic to see. We want more people engaging in politics. Every party engaged in politics, of course we do. But I think having that strong link as well with Labour, with the South and West Yorkshire mayors already been Labour, as I say, with a Labour government at some point this year, be it May, be it later in the year, having that real strong connection. It needs to be remembered that this role is for York and North Yorkshire and the people of it, and I'll be representing everyone in that region. But it must be said, having those connections with the other parts of Yorkshire, particularly developing things like transport, will be so vital.
And talking about the role, I think when people sometimes hear the term mayor, for instance, do you get any change with this role?
I don't get any change. I don't get a flash car or a top hat.
And you don't get to open charity shops. And I think this is sometimes the confusion, isn't it? With
exactly that. It's exactly that. I'm still getting that on a daily basis, and I'm sure all the other candidates are. It's not that mayor. It's a mayor that has power and real say in things. So it's a 30-year devolution deal, bringing York and North Yorkshire together. About 540 million of investment over that time. That sounds a lot of money. It is a lot of money, but in terms of when you're doing grand schemes like house building and transport and growing the economy, it's quite a small amount of money. The real power will come from it being a long-term deal, which means businesses can and we can invest long-term into plans and policies, but also it's that money is really there to ignite ideas and work with companies and house builders and transport and everything in between to really get things started, which will then bring in greater investment from the private sector. That's going to be a big part of it, but also then going back to government and saying, we've started this, it's going really well, we want more funding, more power, more support to be able to really grow this. So there's 13 million to build affordable housing on brownfield sites as an example, and just over 2 million to retrofit houses. That's a great start, and that's going to get us going, absolutely. And it's setting that agenda going, we need to be, and I will be building affordable, good quality homes. We can start off, and then we bring other partners in, say the York and North Yorkshire Housing Partnership, for example, working with them very closely to then build those houses and then go to government, Labour government, and say, listen, we're doing this. We can do this. We've shown to you we have the capability of building these homes. Give us more money, give us more funding, more support so we can do it even bigger and better.
The fundamentals kind of objectives really of the combined authority and the mayor is really sort of the levelling up of the north versus the south. And I think there's been a lot of sort of focus on the budgets and the number of years that gets spent over and setting up the new combined authority. Do you think people understand that really this is to sort of level things out, level out spending, say on transport, for instance, which there's a big sort of difference between the north and the south. Do you think that message is getting over, or are people just hearing it's another council and another group of, another authority, I suppose?
Yeah, I really hope it's getting through, because it is vitally important that we do have a spokesperson for York and North Yorkshire and really can vouch for how important we are and how we need that funding and that support, which we've never had before. As I say, terms like levelling up, people are fed up of hearing because they're hearing these terms, but actually nothing's really coming with it. So a report the other day turned out that only about 10% of the so-called levelling up fund had actually been spent and used. Well, that's not good enough. Our regions and our local authorities are on their knees. They need the support, they need to be done quicker, and we need to be invested in our communities. Without that, these terms like levelling up just lose all their strength because people just hear another slogan. I'm hoping people see this very differently, because it is differently, because this is the first time we're having this role. We have got money coming through with it. We have an opportunity to link up York and North Yorkshire and then into the other parts of Yorkshire and really grow the economy collectively and have a spokesperson for the first time, because obviously we've never had this role before as a mayor. So having this singular position, I suppose, that can really stand up and be counted for and say, listen, in York and North Yorkshire, we have been left behind. We have coastal regions that are really struggling. Rural communities are really struggling. We need the investment, we need the support, and this is why. And if you give us this support and you give us this funding, we can get on and do stuff. We have the capabilities here to grow our economy fantastically well. We can be leaders in the green energy sector and growing that. We are front line of food in this country. We can grow our food security and procurement and production right here in North Yorkshire. We have some phenomenal coastal regions that need to be championed more. We have cities like York, which brings so much into tourism, and places like Harrogate as well, and then going out into the Yorkshire Dales. These places are the places when you think of the UK, places like the Yorkshire Dales and the coast. They're phenomenally important, but they've been left behind and they've been ignored and they haven't had the support that they've needed. And we now have this opportunity with a mayor to say, actually, we need your help. We can crack on. We can do stuff here. Give us that funding. Give us that support. Work in partnership with us. Work in partnership with the other mayors, not just in Yorkshire, but other mayors around the region and with central government to be like, you give us the support. You give us the extra funding. We will get on and showcase how fantastic this region is.
And do you think we've not got that funding because really it's a county then? We've not sort of shouted loud enough for what we want? Is there not been someone, if you like, that ambassador kind of position for the county that's gone and fought the corner, if you like, for York and North Yorkshire?
That is one of the reasons potentially, that we haven't had that sort of spokesperson, I suppose, for North Yorkshire, and then collectively as Yorkshire. As I say before, we're having a York and North Yorkshire mayor, a South Yorkshire mayor and a West Yorkshire mayor. That's three voices championing the whole of Yorkshire. That's huge. The population of Yorkshire and what we have here is so great. It's so vast. It is the biggest county, obviously. We have so much to offer here, but we haven't had those singular voices, I suppose. It could well be that. When we think of how the country's set up, it's generally seemed that more investment has gone into the south, and that is true. Yeah. And we have regions in the north which are really, really struggling. That's not to say there aren't regions all over the country that are, obviously, but when you look how big Yorkshire is, and York and North Yorkshire in particular in that, and how much we have to offer, it's a travesty that we haven't had the investment and support that we've needed. And it needs to change because we've got too many people here, too much to offer to this country. And if we want to hit things like net zero and improve our food security and grow our green economy and support our rural areas, then York and North Yorkshire is the perfect testbed to do all this. We have everything here. We have organisations, doing this already, fantastic work. We have an opportunity with a mayor to bring this all together collectively and grow it for the whole region, and then link in with the other mayors to really bring that power up here.
And I know your background is in retail, but not just running a shop, if you like, in York. You've been quite active, haven't you, in the retail community, well, particularly the independent shop community. Is that kind of experience that then goes forward then on a wider scale, if you like, for the county and what you've learnt in York? Yes,
hugely. So I've had my own small business now for 9 years. I'm passionate about supporting high streets. People always say the high streets are dying. They're not dying, they're just changing. What high streets are offering now is very different to what it was 15, 20 years ago, but we need to adapt and evolve. It's really important that we support our local small businesses because they are the heartbeat of all our high streets across the entire region, across the country. We look post-COVID, regions that did or came back better, bounced back better after COVID and the pandemic and the restrictions. Those ones that had much more local, small, owned and operated shops and operations because they invested in their communities. People wanted to invest back into them because they supported their communities. They employ local people. They put their profits back into their community, and that's why they came back post-COVID really, really well. I've worked with organisations for the last 8 or 9 years, people like the FSB, the Chamber of Commerce, councils, North Yorkshire Police, MPs, over the last 7, 8 years to really support the high streets, how we bring people back into them, how we create these places where people feel part of it, community space, bringing families back in, but also how we support those small businesses who want to start up. How much it cost me to set my business up 10 years ago is almost nothing compared to what it is to start a business now. It's so expensive and it's so risky. Obviously, the last few years we've gone through, it's been incredibly difficult to have any type of business, particularly on the high street with the cost of rent and rates and everything else in between, energy prices, everything else. So what I want to do is create the Mayor's High Street Fund to really support those small businesses via, support, financial support, providing them with access to legal advice or how to create a business plan or places to go for grants, but also that collective working with other small businesses and bringing communities together so you actually feel a part of it. So when you are a small business owner like I was when I started, felt very much on your own, you didn't really know where to go for support. We would provide that support so people can go, actually, I want to start a small business, a shop, whatever it be. How do I do it? We'll have this arm of the Mayor's office to be able to do that. And that's not just in York, Harrogate, right across the whole region, because the more small businesses we have, the more the more shops get taken up, so we don't have many empty high streets, people looking to invest back into the towns and cities. But then those bigger retailers and those bigger businesses that we need as well, they will see thriving high streets, then they'll want to come back in as well, which is also important that we're working with them.
Yeah. And just talking about a separate part of the Mayor's responsibility, there's a lot around the economy and I can't use the word levelling up anymore. Can you just tell me not to? Yeah. Which is fair enough. But a separate part really is taking on the role of the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner, and it's almost like a bit of an island in itself, isn't it? That role, and I think it's difficult when you talk to a mayoral candidate. You're not in post yet, so it's difficult to sort of say, well, what will you definitely do on these, these particular positions, but I think it's fair to ask if there's sort of broad sort of principles that you would work to or approaches. Do you have a thought of what you would sort of do with the PFCC function, the police and fire?
Yeah, so obviously we all know that the cuts have been heavy to both police and fire services over the last 14 years. At the peak of police and fire numbers in 2010, they've pretty much dwindled down since, really. The great thing and this is why that link to national government will be so strong, because Labour nationally are going to be recruiting 13,000 police and police officers into the country, and we'll be putting our hand up and saying we need those here. We have a huge region, but actually percentage one of the smaller forces, and that's not good enough. And we have seen, particularly from my aspect, from retail crime has gone up, rural crime in terms of theft from farming and machinery has gone up, violence towards women and young children, going up. All these things cannot continue, and it's because our forces don't have the resources in the first place. So having an older brother who's a police officer, the job he does is incredibly challenging times. We need to support our officers, police and fire, and they need the resources. We need to bring these officers back in. We can't expect them to do the job of 15, 20, 25 years ago when they don't have the resources that they had back in those days. It's changed, but unfortunately, crime is still there. We still need officers on the street. We still need to be living in safe, secure places. So that's why, again, standing up as a mayor for our region and being like, we need these officers here. We cannot continue in this downward trajectory like we see in education, like we see everywhere. Cuts, staff leaving, resources leaving, but expect them to provide the same services. When you're going into the NHS, all these different places, say schools everywhere, we're going in there expecting the service that we need, but they don't have the resources and the people power anymore, and we're expecting the same, but it's not there. So we have to be funding in. So that's where the big part of will be bringing in these officers that have been offered nationally into our region. And
it's kind of very refreshing to hear that you'd sort of work with the police, because I think there's a tendency with the PFCC role, what do people say? Oh, they can sack the chief constable. And surely if things have got so bad that you need to sack the chief constable, something has desperately gone wrong with the relationship between the PFCC and the police force. But I think they come under a level of criticism, and I think this is possibly why they don't always, don't always want to talk or to tell you their problems, if that makes sense. Yeah. Because they just get criticised even more. So I think what you're saying there about working with them, I think they need to be supported. So I agree with you.
100%. It's like when we look at key services like police, like fire, teachers, NHS, dentists, everywhere we look, they're all on their knees. They've all been cut. Services have been cut. Funding has been cut. We don't have the people working in these places that we expect. So we look at schools and we want schools to be offering, you know, so much more than just the core subjects, but they don't have the staff and the resources to do it. So themselves, they're having to get through with what they can, with the best they can, and they're doing a fantastic job under incredibly difficult situation. And something has to change. So when we're talking about police fire crime commissioner and working with the police and fire, I'm not going to go in there and you know, and start going off at them and saying they're doing X, Y, and Z wrong. They need the support and they need the resources and they need the people to be able to do the job that we need of them.
Yes,
we cannot expect, you know, the level of support that we need from these vital services if they don't have the people to deliver it. It's not fair, and it's not their fault, and it's not our fault. It's national government for cutting away constantly at these sources. So when you get to the point when you need them, they're not there. So over the last few years, when we really needed our frontline services, particularly during like COVID pandemic and everything, when we needed our frontline services to be there, rock solid supporting them, because they're so stretched already and literally skeleton staff, that they can't provide the level of service that I'm sure they want to do, that we need, because they don't have it. They don't have the people. And if you're going to cut the people away, then what you're going to be left with? You're going to be left with services that are not fit for purpose. And it's not their fault. It's the fault of the fact they haven't got the staff and the resources anymore.
Yes. I think we've talked for quite a time, but I've got the most difficult question now, David. Is there anything that I should have asked you in this interview that I haven't asked you?
I think one of the questions that hasn't been asked too much, but I think it's really important to ask, is why people are doing things like wanting to become mayor, and why people get into these kind of positions and put themselves forward. And for me, it has been a really difficult one, because over the last few years we've all gone through a lot. And I look at, say, things like frontline services, and, you know, having a wife who was a teacher and brother's a police officer, and my mum's been on an NHS waiting list for over 2.5 years, and having a small business and how difficult that's been. And something's got to change, and it's really important that we get a good broad spectrum of people getting involved in politics. And I think not just having career politicians, people who come into it from a different angle, from a different side of things. And being a small business owner, having 2 young children, gone through the last few years that everyone else done, you have a different view of things. And I'm not saying that, you know, I've got all the answers to everything. Nobody has. But what I do have is a willingness to bring people together and to set a collective goal to move York and North Yorkshire forward, and bring the right people in to do that, because we have to do some change. We cannot continue along with the status quo. We have to do things differently. If we carry on like we're doing, it's not even worth thinking about where we could be in 5-10 years time. So we have to start doing things differently. And I'm hoping my experience of being a small business owner, having young children, you know, seeing a wife in working in education, a brother, as I said, in the police force, and everything else in between, you kind of feel like you've got a pretty good idea of what's going on and what we need to achieve. And I think having that understanding will be really important, obviously mixed with people who have been involved in local politics for a long time. And again, it's bringing those right people in who have those experiences. And I think it's important in this role in particular, because I do see it quite differently to a traditional, say, MP or a councillor. It has having that bit more of being an enabler and bringing people in, a slightly business mindset of setting a collective goal and how we go and reach that goal. Because that's what being a small business owner is about, or any business owner is about, having a goal, bringing the right people in to enable you to get to that destination, and that's what this role will be. So I think understanding where people are coming from and what their background is really important for this role.
Great, thank you very much for the time.
Pleasure.